Well, hey everybody, this is Seth Williams from the RE Tipster blog, and I've got here a good buddy of mine. I've never actually talked to him until now, but I've known him for a while through the blog and through the RE Tipster Club. His name is Billy Rogers, and he's been commenting on the blog and being active in the forum for, I think, a couple of years now, something like that. And he's just been a really, really helpful voice for other people who are looking for help. He's got a really good perspective on the business. And I just wanted to sit down with him and just talk for a few minutes about what he's experienced in the land business and lessons he's learned and that kind of thing. So, hey, Billy, how you doing?
Hey, Seth.
Hey.
Doing good.
Up? I just sort of got a few questions we'll kind of run through, and you can let us know your thoughts. So I wonder if you can tell us, how was it that you first heard about land investing? Like, what was the first moment you sort of discovered it, and what made you decide to give it a shot?
Oh, yeah. The very first time I heard of it was your interview on Bigger Pockets podcast. And just the whole idea of it really intrigued me. Not having to fix up a house, no repairs.
Yeah.
And like just the idea just stuck with me. I just kept thinking about it for a long time. And it took quite a while before I actually did it. But, you know, I just kept thinking of it, trying to think like, well, could it really work for me? You know, those kinds of things.
Cool. Now, had you ever done anything with real estate prior to land? Like, did you ever do house flipping or rental properties or anything like that?
I had a couple of rental properties, but that was it. Okay. And that was one of my motivations for wanting to do this, was to acquire money in order to get more rental properties.
Sure. Yeah, no, I hear you. That's part of why I do it too. So when you first got started, what made you decide to give it a shot? How did you get the confidence to make that first leap? I think you were saying before I started hitting the record button here, you had heard about a course that I had reviewed, and you bought that course, and then you gave it a shot after that. Is that how it went?
Yeah, of course. I mean, I probably sat on it for 5 months before I took any action.
Sure.
And then I had a hard time believing it could work, to be honest with you. Then I finally decided I'm just going to try it and see what happens. So I sent out my first mailer, and I got my first deal.
Wow,
I
sweet.
mean, it was a very small deal. I got for $1,100. I eventually sold it for $2,200, and that first sale was really exciting.
Oh, I believe it. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Now, when you got that first deal, did you did direct mail, or where'd you get your list, and what kind of mail
the
did
first
you send
list was Agent Pro 24/7. It was like $19 to get a list.
Okay.
I targeted tax delinquent, and I think I sent out 60 hand-addressed envelopes, and one person responded by email that lived out of state. I think she lived in Montana, and I think her mother had given her a lot, and she had absolutely no use for it and had stopped paying the taxes. I actually bought it for $400, and I paid about $600 in taxes. Yeah, and then got a title report for about $100. So,
cool.
You know, all in around $1,100.
Sure, good deal. Now, those results, was that like, did you expect that kind of thing, or did you send this out just assuming it would not work, just to kind of test the waters? Or
I didn't believe it would work. I'll be honest with you. I really didn't believe it would work. Sure. I was skeptical.
Okay.
But I was like, you know what? I'm just going to ignore that little voice and just try it, follow the steps, and see what happens. Yeah,
and I think something that sort of gives people a level of comfort, at least I know when I was getting started, like even if it does fail and crash and burn, like it's not like I'm putting $50,000 on the line. Like it's not a crazy expense. I can sort of afford to play with this and see what happens.
Yeah, I mean that mailer, $19 for the list, and then stamps for 60 envelopes. You know, I printed the letters out of my own printer, and so it was not a big investment.
Sure. And did you say, was that like a tax delinquent list through Agent Pro, or was that just kind of a okay?
Yeah, I clicked the box for, I think it was tax delinquent or whatever it is on there.
Yeah, I mean, going back, you've been doing this for about a year and a half or so.
About a year and a half.
Okay. What kinds of deals have you done? I mean, give us an example of like a really great one, or just what sort of the average deal has looked like for you?
I'll tell you my best one.
Okay.
My best one was about 10.8 acres, and in Texas. It was a really great location, but the issue is it was landlocked. The lady I bought it from, there was a sort of a private drive, a road that she used to go to,
Mm-hmm.
and then that owner died. His kids gated it, locked it up, and told her she wasn't allowed in there anymore.
Yeah. Okay.
And so she stopped paying the taxes. So she was going to lose it. So I bought it all in 9,500, and I sold it for 35,000.
Wow, that's awesome. Good
Yeah.
job, man. Cool.
Yeah, that was my biggest deal, and
Mm-hmm.
it was a little bit scary buying a landlocked property.
I hear you. It's kind of a leap of faith, but I think as long as you get it for cheap enough, you just have to find the right buyer, like the kind of buyer who wants a landlocked property. There's fewer of them out there, but they're out there. You just have to keep.
Yeah, yeah, and in Texas, generally, they require the surrounding owners to give you access.
Oh, okay.
So, I mean, that guy wasn't really legally blocking her. I mean, I guess she didn't want to go to court or mess with any of that.
Yeah. Do you know how that works? Because I had heard that about Michigan too, and when I dug deeper into it, I found that's actually not the case in Michigan. But there's a lot of places where they do require surrounding owners to give you access. How do they decide, like, which owner has to give up the access? Do you know?
I
Probably didn't have to deal with it yourself.
Yeah, well, actually, I called one of the surrounding owners and, asked him if I could have access. He's like, sure. He's like, I have to give you access. But his was actually landlocked too. And he was leasing it to the guy that owned the property in front of him that had the road. And it was really like driving through these pastures, and it wasn't convenient. There was a more convenient way to go. And the lady I sold it to there's two small lots in front. She bought one of those, and I assume her plan was to buy the one on the road, join them all together.
Sure. Okay.
But yeah, I didn't really have to get into it because I found a buyer before I got too deep into it.
Okay. Cool. It's a nice way to do it, to not have to mess
Yeah,
with it.
yeah, that was my biggest deal. I'd say lately, like my average deal is probably, it's probably something assessed for 20,000. I'll buy it for 5 and sell it for 15.
Sure.
That's probably the average deal that I've been doing lately.
Okay. And are you doing this all on a part-time basis, just sort of in your spare
Yes.
time? Or okay.
Yeah, I have a full-time job, so this is totally in my spare time.
How many, like on the average, how many hours a week would you say you have to put into this to make it work?
Probably 3 or 4. I mean, there are some things that I waste time on that aren't really productive, but
Yeah, me too. I know what that's like.
I mean, the things that actually make you the money are sending out the offers,
Sure. Yeah, absolutely.
getting the list, sorting, and that really doesn't take much time. I mean, I've been spending time with getting an LLC set up and hiring a CPA and getting the taxes all straightened out and set up with QuickBooks. I should have done that earlier, but so that's been taking a lot of my time recently.
Sure.
I think once I get that done, I can get back to focusing on the land deals.
Cool. That's awesome. Now, you had actually, you had started a little forum conversation a few months back now, just talking about like what you've been able to do with, the profits and stuff. I thought that was really cool. I had never thought about that, but that's an interesting thing to think about and just be aware of. But can you just recap again? What are some of the things you've been able to do since you've been doing this?
I did pay off one of my rental properties.
Okay.
Yeah, so I have, I started out, I had 2. I've got 3 now, and 2 of them are paid off. I've got one I still owe about $55,000. One of my goals is to pay that one off. Paid for my laser eye surgery. I don't have to wear contacts anymore.
Oh, nice. Cool.
So it's nice. That was like $3,000, and it was nice to have the cash to do that and to take a few vacations. I paid off a loan I had on one of my rental properties. I had to put a new roof on it, and I'd been paying on that loan for a few years, and I'd gotten it down to about $2,000. But it was nice just pay that off, pay some stuff off, take care of some medical things. Taking a few vacations. Went to Costa Rica. Took the kids to the Dominican Republic, and I will say one thing though. I've gotten into is travel hacking.
Okay, what's that all about?
That's where like you sign up for a credit card, and if you spend a certain amount of money, they give you a bonus, airline points or hotel points, which is perfect when you're doing delinquent tax properties, and you got to pay $2,000 or $3,000 in delinquent taxes. So I would just get a credit card, pay off the tax, then pay off the credit card.
That's a great idea. I never even thought about that.
Yeah,
I gotta start doing that.
I mean, because at first, like, I really didn't want to track like every little expense, so I just use it for the big things like that, like taxes or insurance.
Cool.
So that's helped cover a lot of airline tickets and things like that.
Definitely. So it sounds like, and correct me if I'm wrong, you've been sort of doing this without an LLC today, just kind of in your personal name?
Yeah, the whole first year.
Cool.
Yeah,
And that's,
I mean, I just got it set up like last month.
yeah, and I think that's a totally viable way to do it. I think like the liability in this kind of business, it's not non-existent, but it's not the highest risk kind of business to run. And especially in the beginning when you kind of like trying to prove it to yourself and see if it actually works. I think it can make a lot of sense to just hold off on the LLC formation until you've sort of figured out what you're doing and you've got your feet solidly planted. And I've seen people just kind of sputter out and stall because they can't get the LLC thing figured out. And I think it's a good idea to do that. But if that's going to like cost you from getting started and doing anything, then just hold off until you figured out what you're doing.
Yeah, I can't tell you how many people I've seen are like, yeah, I'm working on my website and setting up my LLC. And
I know.
I'm like, that's not making you money, you know?
Yeah, man. So,
I mean, I would say tell people do a few deals to see if you even want to stick with it, you know? I was going to say you may decide you don't like it, you know?
Yeah, and it's something else, like kind of a hidden little issue in there is like once you do create an LLC, it sort of complicates things a little bit because then you have to start, signing everything differently and you got to create like your own separate business bank account and, accounting and just, I don't know, it's a little more complicated than just doing it in your personal name. And I think if you're going to be in it for the long haul, I mean, it's just something you'll have to deal with. It's worth the complications, but when you're just starting out, like there's enough to learn anyway without having to, jumble things up with that.
Yeah. I say do a couple deals first.
Yeah, definitely.
See if you want to even stick with it.
So I'm curious with these properties you've been selling, like how long does it usually take you to sell them and how are you getting them sold? Like what mediums are you using to sell these things?
Almost everything is sold through Craigslist or Zillow.
Okay.
Yeah, those are the two places that I've been getting almost all my sales.
And with
I've
Zillow,
tried a few.
What's that? Go ahead.
I've tried a few other things, but haven't gotten any results.
Yeah, I know. It's there's actually a lot of places you can list land for sale, but they're definitely not all equal in terms of traffic they bring in and exposure. And it's kind of a matter of just figuring out what works. And once you know what gets results, just like keep doing that.
Yeah. I mean, my number one place is Craigslist.
Yeah.
I'd say Zillow after that. I get a few sales from there. But
Cool.
yeah.
Good deal.
Yeah, Craigslist works great.
Yeah, I agree. Are there any specific tools or resources you found helpful in this business? Like things you rely on every day to do any aspect that's really, really helpful?
Yeah, I mean, I use Dropbox, and I pretty much followed your example, how you organize everything. That's really nice because I can access my documents from anywhere.
Cool.
I've got it on my cell phone. If I'm out of town, I can look up stuff. I can email someone something if I need to. That's one thing that I use. That's probably been just the most convenient thing, just having access to my documents everywhere. I can't really think of anything else at the moment.
Sure.
Yeah, I do Craigslist. I don't even have a selling website. I don't have a website. That's something that I eventually would like to do, but everything's sold so far without it.
No, I'm glad you said that. It's always interesting to hear what people like really need in order to make it work. And if you don't need that, you don't need it. I agree. It's one of those things it's really nice to have. It can do a lot for you, but it's not like you can't succeed without it.
Yeah, I mean, I've incrementally added things. Like I started out with just a Google voicemail account. And everything went there. Get home from work and check it. Since I've started doing bigger mailers, I've started using an answering service. But they also have a script that I give them to sort of, it's similar to the questions on the website, to kind of weed them out. So I have them ask about 10 questions, and then I get those leads emailed to me. So that's definitely helped eliminate some of the time I spent on the phone and when I was just using the Google Voice account.
I'm curious, do you mind sharing which answering service you're using?
Yeah, it's Pat Live.
Okay. Is that like really expensive, or do you pay people by the hour that they're on the phone, or how does that work?
They have different levels, but I think they have one that's like $70, one that's $120. I was on the $120 plan, but I realized that I wasn't really using all the minutes, so I just told them lower it to $70, the $70 plan. If you go over, they charge you a little bit. So, I mean, it's been working great. It's real easy to You just email them if you want to change up your questions. There's something you forgot in your script or you need to change.
Sure.
I just email them and it's changed within a day.
Interesting. Do you are those like the people who answer the phones? Are they like U.S. based, or are they in the Philippines, or how does that work?
I don't know, but I've called a couple times and they sound like they're in the U.S., but I haven't verified that.
Okay, cool. Do you think that's been pretty helpful in like winning deals you would have lost to the Wise, or do you think you'll continue using it over the long term?
Yeah, I definitely think I mean, because I started out just small mailers, like anywhere from 60 to like 150, because I was doing only tax delinquent at first. And then when I started doing non-tax delinquent lists, they were much larger, and, just the volume of calls was just overwhelming. It also, since they ask them the questions, sometimes I'll determine something's just not something I want. Or you'll get just the angry people, you don't have to deal with them. That's nice.
Cool.
But yeah, since I have a job, it's, it's very helpful because, I only have a small amount of time. I can do this when I get home.
I know when I was getting started, I was basically just telling people to call me, and then I would call them back, and there was really no indication that they were motivated at that point. I was just trying to figure out, what their property was all about. And it was just like, it consumed so much time. It was crazy. And that was a very good way to burn out. So I know it's, especially if you're not like I'm not the kind of person who just loves chatting on the phone all day long. Like I do it when I have to, and that's it. So, if that's the kind of person you are, it could be a very good investment. I could see.
Yeah. I talked to a seller yesterday, and then, I determined it wouldn't work out because the property wasn't in his name and it was about to go in the tax foreclosure. I could not get him off the phone.
Isn't that crazy? It's like
he wanted to tell me about other properties he owned. He wasn't selling them. He just wanted to tell me about them. Yeah, you get people that just want to talk.
Yeah, so. I know. I guess that's fine, but do it on your own time or something.
Yeah, I try to be nice to him, but sometimes I'm just thinking, I want to get off the phone.
No, I totally get that.
I love it when someone just emails me and we do a deal through email. That's the best.
I know.
I've had a few of those.
Yeah, I think email, it kind of depends on the person, I guess, but you can kind of lose something with that, but it is a heck of a lot more convenient, that's for sure. Yeah.
I'll tell you, I've only done 3 deals that way. They wanted to sell. Just want to know how quickly they get their money. That was it. They went pretty smoothly.
Have you had any, bad experiences, or has there been any things that have sort of stung you or just made you realize, man, I got to do things differently? Like, what are some of the big lessons you've learned in this business?
Yeah. I have one property that a representative from Clayton Homes called me. And, by the way, a lot of the people that buy my properties, they're, a lot of them want to put a mobile home on it and live on it. Sure. So one time I had this property that a lot of people were calling, but they weren't closing. I wasn't actually selling it. There was interest, but for whatever reason they weren't closing. So Clayton Homes called me, said, "Oh, we got a buyer for your home. We can handle everything for you." In case y'all don't know, Clayton Homes is a mobile home dealer. I was like, I am getting tired of taking these sales calls. I'll just let them handle it. So they were supposedly selling this land for me like a package deal with one of their homes. After about a month, I didn't hear anything. I called and they're like, "Oh yeah, that guy couldn't get approved." I'm like, "Well, thanks for letting me know." And then a week later, they called me again. "Oh, we got another couple that wants to buy it, and I was like, "Okay, I'll give them one more chance." So we set the contract to close out after a month. After a month, it didn't close. They're like, "Oh, it's going to be just a few more weeks. We got to get an appraisal." To make a long story short, after 2 more months, I told them, I said, "I'm putting the ad back up, and whoever closes first is getting this deal." And they're like, "Oh, it'll be 1 more week." Just one. Like every time I talked to them, it was 1 more week. Yeah. Finally, I found a buyer. I sold it. I texted them, said, "Hey, the property's sold." And then they're like, "We can cut you a check right now. We can pay you more. We can blah, blah, blah." They were like up in arms about me selling the land. But I'm like, "I warned you. I told you." So I'm not dealing with them anymore. I can tell you that. That was a bad experience, but I actually made good money when I sold it for more than I was going to sell it to Clayton.
That's probably my biggest frustration, specifically when listing properties on the open market on Craigslist and that kind of thing, is if you don't have an existing relationship with a buyer, a lot of people are just so flaky. They'll say they'll do one thing, but it's like it is never done until that deal is closed and you got your check in hand.
Yeah, you don't count your money before you have it.
It's frustrating. Like, I wish you could just believe what people say, but
I know.
Unless you know they're good for it, you just never know until it's gone.
I can't tell you how many people are like, I've got cash. Yeah, I want to buy it. And one guy, I had the deed drawn up. We're going to meet. Never heard from him ever again.
Oh my gosh. Seriously? Oh,
yeah.
That's horrible.
So you get stuff like that.
Mm-hmm. Well, I'm curious, do you have like any kind of a long-term plan? Like, do you want to retire early on this, or is this just kind of like to supplement your income, or just to pay off rentals or buy more rentals, or where you think this is all going to go?
Yeah, I want to, pay off like my rental, and one thing I've gotten interested in is possibly getting into mobile home parks, possibly small apartments. So at the same time, I'm kind of have conflicting goals. I want to build up the capital of my business a little bit more, so that I always have the money available, to do any deals that come along. I'd like to pay off my rental and my personal home eventually. Get into mobiles, and I probably would like to retire early, or at least. I don't want to work till 65. I'd like to, a little bit earlier than that. Stop working. So I contribute to my 401k and do all that stuff in addition to this.
You had mentioned earlier you had tried your hand at blind offers and that kind of thing. Are you still doing that, or is that something you tried?
Yeah, that's the only method I've ever used.
Oh, doing blind offers?
Yeah.
Okay, cool.
I mean, I guess my theory was that I wouldn't have to talk to people as much with the blind. Like, they would just know, like, this is where I am, and if they're far off, they wouldn't bother to call. I'm still learning stuff all the time, because I got a call just the other day. And the guy's like, "Well, what's your offer?" And I'm like, "It's printed in the letter." But
what else do you want to know, man?
But so I'm thinking I really need to make that number that just big and bold so it stands out. So I guess some people aren't reading it carefully and they're skipping over that. So that's one thing I'm going to do. But that's the only method I've used. I've never used the the other method where you just say, "I want to buy your land," and then have them contact you.
Sure. Okay. Cool.
So I really don't have any basis for comparison.
Yeah.
I don't know. It's been working for me, so I just stuck with it.
Sure. Okay. Cool. Is your blind offer like a 1-page template or a 2-page template, or what? How does that work?
I've experimented with that. I had a 2-page template that included a purchase offer. And I rarely got the purchase offer. Usually they would just call, And if you're self-closing a deal, you really don't need a purchase offer. The only thing you really need it for is when you're using a title company. They require it. So I started experimenting with just a 1-page letter, just stating the purchase amount without a purchase offer. That's worked too. I found that when I would include a purchase offer, the few that did send it back ended up being properties I didn't want once I looked into them.
Sure.
Like some of these areas that have real high HOA fees and stuff, that are on a golf course, and there's hundreds of lots for sale.
Yeah.
I'm familiar at about 25% of the assessed value,
Yeah.
There was one I looked at that there's probably 200 lots for sale and they were like for sale at 8,000 and the county had them appraised at 25.
Oh man.
So, and I'd sent out an offer for like 6 or something. And once I looked into it, I'm like, there's no way. I'm not.
Yeah, just doesn't add up. It's not going to work.
Yeah, those people were really wanting to sell. I had a lot of responses.
Sure. Okay. If you were talking to somebody who's sort of thinking about getting into this business, or say they've like just been at it for a month or something like that, do you have any words of advice or wisdom or anything they should keep in mind as they're getting started?
Yeah, I mean, I would say just as simple as it sounds, send out your letters, I mean, like nothing else really matters, like messing with the website is not going to make you money. Get a list, send out your letters, and that's what drives everything, at least for me. I haven't ever done a deal where just some stranger comes along and finds my website, at least so far. I've had a few submissions, but we didn't end up doing a deal. So all my deals are from direct mail. Yeah,
and there's if you understand how to do direct mail right and how to filter your lists and what to say and all that, it is extremely powerful. I mean, there's a lot you can get done that way.
Yeah, I mean, like you said, you got to find motivated sellers, and most of the people you're sending letters to, they're not motivated, but a small percentage will be.
Yeah, it's just a numbers game.
Yeah, and when I first started, I had a hard time wrapping my mind around the idea that someone would sell their land so cheaply, and over time I've kind of seen a few reasons, But I also heard someone say once, it really doesn't matter why. They do.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
You know, like I think a lot of people, that's what stops them. They can't get their head around the reason why. And at the end of the day, it doesn't matter. They do it. But some of the reasons are like a lot of people, they've been gifted the land, you know, and it's a gift where you have to pay taxes on every year.
Yeah. Sounds like a horrible gift, if you ask me.
Yeah. When someone gets a small piece of land, you know, and they don't live anywhere near it, they've got to pay taxes. You know, over time, it has no use for them. So a lot of the people, they live far away from the land or even out of state. Sometimes it's a divorce situation. Sometimes they move away. I generally don't even get into it. I try not to get into the seller's business too much. You know, if they're willing to sell it to me, I don't want to get into their business and say something that's going to offend them. So, you know, I'm like, I just try to buy it as quickly as I can.
Yeah, I'm curious with the blind offers you've been sending out, and especially it sounds like you sort of started with tax delinquents and you've moved more to like general landowners and that kind of thing, people who aren't delinquent necessarily.
Yeah.
Would you find with the non-delinquent property owners, the people who end up selling to you, are they out of state or are they in the same state or in the same county? Like, what's the ratio of how that works?
I would say the last two I did, one was tax delinquent, one wasn't. And the one that wasn't was out of state. The guy that lived near Las Vegas. Yeah, I really don't know what the story was. It was a small, like a 1 acre property in Texas in a rural county. And, you know, he's out in Las Vegas. You know, he called and, you know, he wanted to sell. He just asked, how does it work? And I explained to him, you know, that we'd use a title company and, you know, they would verify that he was the owner and they would handle the transaction for us. And he was happy with it.
Cool.
And then I think it was Victor that said something about putting a sign out in the place. I went out there and did that. And the neighbors called and I sold it to them. Wow. So I never even had to put it on Craigslist.
Nice. So it sounds like that's it probably depends on the situation, but it sounds like that's worth doing in a lot of cases, especially if it gets those kind of results so quick.
I've done it before and it hasn't worked for me, but I just thought, well, I'm going out there to take some pictures. Why not bring a sign with me? Yeah. Because that's one thing I usually do is take pictures. So
it almost kind of reminds me of like the neighbor letter approach. How like most of the time it doesn't necessarily work, but when it works really well. So it's like, it's kind of like the for sale sign. Like that's a way of just notifying the neighborhood, hey, this thing's for sale. Whereas otherwise they wouldn't even know if you didn't do it.
Yeah. Yeah. The neighbors wanted to buy it so their daughter could live on it, you know? So like the lady she was super happy to get the property, you know, she wanted her future grandchildren, you know, to be next to her. So she was super happy. I have put up signs in the past and sent out neighbor letters and they didn't work. You know, this one time it did.
It's interesting how you mentioned with the non-delinquent property owner, they lived out of state and the person who was delinquent lived in the state. I don't know if that's like common, but I've actually noticed that same thing when I've done tax delinquent mailers. A lot of the sellers are right there in the state or even in the same county. And when I'm doing the non-delinquent blind offers, a lot of those sellers are out of state. Maybe it's just a fluke or something, but it's kind of an interesting trend. I'd like to explore that more. Maybe doing only the out-of-state owners with blind offers or something. I don't know.
Actually, when I first started, I only sent the out-of-state, and then I realized Texas is a pretty big state. So,
yeah, that's true.
You know, like I realized that I sold one to a guy in Oklahoma, but he was just across the river. I mean, and I was like, you know, there's people in Texas that are 700 miles away, you know.
Sure.
So I quit, you know, I just started sending to everybody. You know, I didn't filter, but, you know, if you're in a small state, send it out of state. It's probably a good idea. Yeah, I definitely think like the highest return is going to be on like tax delinquent and out of state.
Sure.
But, you know, I've bought land from people that weren't tax delinquent and lived in state. I bought a property that was like a triangle shape, kind of unusual, but it had a small little pond and people just love that. They're like, oh, I've always wanted to have a pond, you know, put some fish in it. And,
sure.
You know, I mean, I like almost quadrupled my money on that deal and they weren't tax delinquent. I mean, I think they just didn't use it, you know, it was like I think it was some siblings had inherited it and it took a while to get all their signatures.
Are there not many ponds in that area? Was that like a really unique thing or something?
I guess that's the first property I've sold that had one on it.
Yeah, it's interesting. In Michigan, there's like you look in pretty much any direction and you'll see a lake or a pond or something like that. But I had a property one time that was on an island in Lake Michigan, and
Wow.
and it was amazing. Just like, I mean, there was nothing special about it. I mean, it was very run of the mill type of lot, but like because it was on an island, there was like so much novelty behind that, and people just thought it was so cool. So it's kind of funny sometimes you find certain properties that appeal for weird reasons.
Yeah. I'd say that's probably one of the hardest things I have is when sometimes I get a property that has some unusual characteristics to it.
Mm-hmm.
You know, sometimes I pass and like that triangle shaped property, you know, I was kind of cautious, but I thought I'd give it a try. I was on a good road and, you know, it sold.
Yeah.
So,
yeah. Have you gotten into seller financing at all yet, or not so much?
no, that's one of my goals for this year. I've got a property that I'm in the process of closing on right now that I think I'm going to attempt to owner finance it. But yeah, I have not messed with that mainly because I didn't want to mess with like checks in the mail and all that.
Yeah.
But I've seen there's a few online products that will handle the payments for you.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm going to investigate some of those to try to handle the payments.
Yeah, it's definitely a little more complicated than just doing it cash. But, you know, if your goal is cash flow and passive income, it's a pretty nice thing to do. Just kind of have to decide if you want to deal with all that stuff or not. Like, you know, buyers who stop paying, or, you know, just the extra paperwork and setting up all the infrastructure to handle the payments and that kind of thing.
Yeah, that's something I'm going to dip my toe in, see how I like it. But so far, everything's been cash sales.
Mm-hmm. You think that's made it harder to sell properties? Like,
oh yeah. I get tons of people all saying, "Hey, do you owner finance?" Mm-hmm. I mean, I put it in the ad, no owner finance if I don't want to do that. Mm-hmm. So, and you'll still get people calling asking, "Do you owner finance?" Yeah.
These people don't read, huh?
Yeah, no, they don't. I used to think if I get all the information in the ad, like they won't call and ask. You know, the information that's in, but they do. Mm-hmm. It doesn't matter. Like,
try your best, but you can't always predict what people are going to want.
Yeah, I mean, I'll put the size of the property in the ad. They'll call up. Now, how big is it? Mm-hmm. You know, I don't know what to do about that. But.
Yeah, cool, man. Well, hey, before we wrap this up, anything else you want to share? Anything I didn't ask that is kind of on your mind that you want to let people know about, or not? That's fine too.
No, nothing in particular. Just. I mean, if you're doing this, you know, just get the mail out, you know, sure. That's the number one driver of everything.
Yeah, absolutely.
You know, it's not all the other stuff, you know, it's not your voicemail or website or LLC that's going to make you money. One other piece of advice is keep good records. If you know you're going to do it, man, get set up with QuickBooks or something, get your CPA involved early. I mean, even if you're doing it under your own name, I'm trying to work on my taxes right now. It's a nightmare.
I know, same here. My wife is a CPA, so I'm really, really lucky, but that doesn't really make it easy. It still takes lots of time to sift through stuff. And you know.
One other thing I want to say is make sure you set aside a good chunk of money from these deals to pay your taxes.
Yeah, that's a great point.
So you're not caught up at the end of the year having to scramble to pay that huge tax bill, because I think they call it short-term capital gain. Mm-hmm. So
yeah, it's when you really start doing regular deals, you're supposed to actually send in your payments quarterly. I don't know that. I mean, maybe there's a huge penalty if you fail to do that. I think as long as you pay them at the end of the year, it's probably fine. But, you know, regular businesses that are making a lot more money on a regular basis, it's like another thing you got to think about. So it's another reason to get a CPA involved so they can inform you on that.
Yeah, that's what he told me. He said this year we're going to have to start sending in quarterly payments.
Yeah,
so.
Yeah, I know. It's one of those... That's why I diversified into rental properties, to kind of help offset that pain a little bit, just because there's a lot more tax benefits that come with that package than with land. But
oh yeah, definitely.
But yeah, it's still an inconvenient thing you have to deal with. So.
Yeah. One other thing I would say is just kind of what you mentioned. I mean, this is flipping. It's a job. It's not like, even if you own or finance it, it's not going to be income you receive forever like a rental property.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely.
So, you know, one of my goals is to convert this money, you know, into something that will pay me forever.
Yeah, like permanent.
Yeah.
Yeah, cool, man. Well, hey, I appreciate you taking the time to chat with me and sharing your insights. It's good to hear what's working for you and things you've learned. Yeah, so appreciate it. And
all right.
That's all I have to say.
Well, you're welcome.
Yeah,
I've learned a lot from you, and you've inspired me. So I'll say I appreciate your website and everything you've done.
Cool, great.
It's definitely helped me out a lot.
Yeah, and thanks for being an active member of the RE Tipster Club and for sharing all your wisdom there as well. I know people have really appreciated that too.
Okay. All right. You're welcome,
cool, man.
Seth.
Thanks. We'll talk to you later.
Thanks a lot.
See you.
Okay. Bye.